Hey guys, welcome. Now in this episode we are going to learn about CI/CD pipelines and I'm going to do a couple of videos in this subject. Today let's focus on serverless application and how to create a CI/CD pipeline for serverless applications. And in the upcoming video we'll focus on containerized application. Okay, so let's get started. Now this is our pipeline stages. First we will have our source code and then in the next stage we will get that source code and start building our front end. In the second or the third stage, we will deploy and build our backend. And finally, we'll run our UI testing and make sure everything works fine. Now, there are several activities happening at each stages. The source code stage, basically our source code is living in GitHub. So at least for our example, I'm using GitHub, or you can use AWS Code Commit or any other code repository. Here we are going to use GitHub. So we'll commit our code to a particular branch, let's say a master branch, as and when a commit happens to this master branch, the source code will be pulled. So that's what happens at the source code stage. Now at the second stage, there are multiple steps happening. First, we will get our source code and start running our unit tests. And if the unit tests are passing, we'll start building our front end. Now for this example, we will use a React front end. So basically we will build the React project and have our HTML, CSS and JavaScript file if the unit test passes. And afterwards we'll deploy to S3 as well. Now here I didn't have a separate deploy stage because it's just about pushing the data to S3. So if you are using containers and so on, maybe we need a separate build stage to create those container images and push it to the container repository and so on. But here we just want to send those build file to S3. So we'll do it in the same build stage. So once the front end is built, then we will get that source code and start building our backend as well. So here as well, we will first run our unit tests and then let's build the backend. And for our backend, we are going to use serverless framework. Now here again, we have a couple of options. We can use serverless framework, we can use Amplify backend itself, or any other backend framework for that matter. But in this example, I will use serverless framework. So we will have a serverless service. So we are going to basically build this backend, or rather package the backend and see if everything is packaging well. And then we are going to deploy that serverless service to API Gateway and AWS Lambda. So that happens at the third stage. And once both front-end and back-end is properly built and deployed, then we will run our UI tests. For that, we are going to use GhostInspector. Now this can easily be integrated with our pipeline. We'll look at more information when we proceed through this example. And furthermore, our two build stages, the front-end and the back-end stages, will be AWS Code Build projects. And this entire stages will be maintained by or will be orchestrated by AWS CodePipeline. So as I previously mentioned, there are many ways to build your CI/CD pipeline, and today we are going to follow this. So without further ado, let's go to GitHub and clone the repository. So this is the repository that I posted the code. I will post the link in the description. So let me just copy the URL and I will go to a terminal. I created a new folder as well. Here let's do a git clone. I will cd into this folder and open the code in Visual Studio Code. Okay, and as you can see, there are a couple of folders, backend and frontend. Now frontend is a React application and I'm using AWS Amplify to host this application. When it comes to hosting, I'm using a CloudFront distribution as well as S3 bucket. And my backend, I'm using serverless framework. You can see this is the serverless YML file. And I have a handler.js where my code lives. So the application is a simple to-do application. The backend basically returns a list of to-dos. No, it's not calling out to any database or so on. I have some hard-coded to-dos right now here. And when a request reach out to the backend, it's gonna send this list back to the front end. So that's all my backend does. And the request is made by the front end, and this is the source directory, and it's a React application in the app.js file. I'm calling the backend endpoint. For that, I'm using Axios for doing the HTTP call. And here I'm calling out for this particular URL path /todo/list. And this path I have set up a CloudFront behavior that will point to my API gateway endpoint. So we'll look at that in a bit, how to do that, basically using CloudFront to serve both our front end as well as backend. And once the responses are back, basically our list of to-dos or the simple to-do array, and I'm setting the state of the current component, and then I'm iterating over that list and showing the to-dos in H2 tags. So very simple application. So let's first deploy our front end, and we'll spin up a CloudFront distribution as well as S3 bucket to host our front end. And for that, we are going to use AWS Amplify framework. And you can see there's a folder called Amplify, which I want you to delete because we are going to create it using the CLI itself. So I will just delete that folder so I don't have anything here. Let me take up the terminal, and if I list the directories, I can see my backend and front end. I will cd into my front end, and now I can type amplify init. Now before you type this command, you have to install Amplify CLI and configure Amplify with AWS account. Now this is the getting started guide. I will post this link as well in the description. Two simple steps you have to follow. First, of course you need to have AWS account, and then install the CLI using this command, and then configure Amplify. So once it is done, you can go back to the project. First, let's install the dependencies by npm install. Make sure you do that. Okay, once the dependencies are installed, let's use Amplify to initialize a project. So I will type Amplify init, hit enter. So it's going to ask for a name. I will use front end, that should do. And the environment dev, Visual Studio Code. It's a JavaScript project and it's a React. Accept defaults. Now these are the build directories, build command, start command, and so on. Then it will go ahead and ask me about the AWS profile. So do I have AWS profile? Yes. And the profile that I'm going to use is the default profile. And now it's initializing my project in AWS Cloud. It's going to take a couple of seconds. Okay, now it's successfully created. Now let's start adding hosting to our project. Now we are using Amplify only to host our front end. Of course, we can use Amplify to add backend resources, but for backend part, we are using serverless framework. So I will clear my screen. I will add Amplify, add hosting. Here it will ask, do I need just an S3 bucket or S3 bucket with CloudFront distribution? I need CloudFront with S3 because we are going to configure CloudFront to serve both our backend and front end. Now just select the default hosting bucket name, index HTML, error HTML as well. And now we can do Amplify publish. So now I will type Amplify publish to create our resources in AWS Cloud, basically our S3 bucket and the CloudFront distribution. This accept, and now it will start provisioning my resources. So it's going to take about 15 minutes because it has to provision a CloudFront distribution, and for that it's going to take some time. So I'm going to pause the video and come back once it is done. Okay guys, so the publishing is done. So you can see I have the CloudFront URL as well, the domain name rather. Now I can actually see that if I go to my AWS account and search for CloudFront, and here we have it. And you can see it has already configured my S3 origin as a origin, and it has set a default behavior to send all the requests to that S3 bucket. And now let's host our API as well and create a new path pattern, that is /todo/anything afterwards, to direct to that API gateway endpoint. So I will go back to my code editor and clear my screen. Right now I am in front end. I will go back one folder up and then go to backend folder. So right now I am in the backend folder. Let me close down this app.js file. So here in the serverless YML file, I have a service called todo API, or I will just name it my backend. And it basically have a simple lambda function, and I call it list to dos, which call out to that handler function I showed you earlier, list to dos. And let me show that function again. So this is the list to dos, which return 3 to dos. Okay, and then I configure this event object as well. So this is all we need to create an API gateway using serverless framework. And here I have added a path to-do/list in order to invoke this list to-dos function, which is a get method. So that's all we need to do. So make sure you install serverless globally. If you go to serverless.com/framework, you can see the installation command, npm command, npm install serverless-g. So make sure you do this first. And afterwards, take a terminal in the backend directory. Now you can type serverless deploy. So it's going to package my service and creating a new CloudFormation stack, and then it's going to deploy my Lambda function as well as my API gateway. Alright, so and the endpoint is now deployed. You can see the get endpoint. Now if I come on click on this or control click on this, and I will get my to-dos. There we go. So I need to call this from my front end, which I have already configured. Here in the app.js file, inside the source directory of front end, you can see we are calling out for this endpoint. And now you can see I'm not putting that entire URL here, the backend URL, which is the get URL here. Instead, I'm just adding /todo/list. So this is what I'm going to configure next. We are going to create a path pattern in CloudFront distribution to point to this endpoint. So let's go to my CloudFront distribution. I'm going to create a new origin. So in the origins tab, click create origin, and for the origin domain name, go back to the console and copy this path. Like I don't even need the HTTPS part, just this bit. Copy this one and CloudFront domain name, paste that. That's it. So the origin path type /dev because this is the dev stage. And let me show you that URL again. You can see there's /dev text here. So this is the API stage. So I will just pass that value as the origin path, so I don't have to explicitly say which stage this is. For the origin ID, I will just type API, that should do. Origin protocol, so it only supports HTTPS, and I will click create. Okay, now the origin is added. So let's go to the behaviors tag and create a new behavior. So the path pattern I want to follow is to do slash anything. So if it is to-do list, so in my case it's to-do list, it's going to direct to the API origin. So it could be to-do create, it could be to-do delete, which I'm not going to add it in this example. So anything that matches this path pattern will direct to the API. And select the API here. So the Weavers protocol could be HTTP or HTTPS, that's fine. And I'm going to set the TTLs to 0 because my API needs to send the latest information. So I'll set all these three values to 0 and I will enable gzip compression. And that's it. So I'll create the API behavior. This is going to prevent all the cross issues because it is the same host name that's going to follow the rest of the URL pattern. So there's no any cross origin resource access. So that's good. Okay, now let's go ahead and create our pipeline. In order to create my pipeline, I need two configuration files. As you can remember from the diagram, my front end and back end are two code build projects. So for code build to execute properly, I need to give some instructions. Now in my front end folder, I have a config folder and inside that I have a build spec file. I named it buildspec.dev.yml. So this is the instruction that my code build project adhere to when running this front-end deployment or front-end build rather. First we have the version and then these are the build phases. So I have install phase, build phase, and in the install phase I'm using the runtime Node.js and these are the commands that I'm going to execute. Now these echoes are really some console logs, so don't worry about that. First command, actual command is cd into the front end folder here in this folder, and there's another echo command and I'm checking the present working directory. Maybe actually we don't need it. I will take that out. And then I'm typing npm install because I need to install the npm dependencies in the front end. So that is happening at my install stage. And then it will move on to the build stage. So the first command it's going to run is npm run tests. Now this is the place where we run our unit tests. If I go to my package.json file of frontend, you can see there's this test script which will run jest command. I have added couple of mock tests. If you go to source and app.test.js, I have three fake tests, fake 1, fake 2, and fake 3. So that will be truthy by default. So it's going to run that. So in your application, you can use it to run your actual tests. And once the tests are passed, then I'm going to run the build command, npm run build, which is going to build my React project. And then I'm going to run another script which is called npm run deploy dev. I will show you that in the package.json. There we have it, deploy dev. And this command is really, it's doing the upload of the build directory to the S3 bucket. So here I'm going to use AWS CLI and the command is AWS S3 sync, and I will take anything that is inside the build directory, so which is this directory. So I have all the static file, HTML, CSS, and image files. So all these files will be uploaded to S3 directory. Now of course we have to change the S3 bucket name here. So let me just remove this one and I will go to my AWS. I will go to services and S3, open it up in a new tab. Now we used AWS Amplify to host our application. So if I filter it by date created, you should be able to find your hosting bucket. So in my case, this is the hosting bucket it created. So I will click on that and I just need to copy this bucket name and replace it here and then pass the region. So I am in USD East 1 region. So that's all. So that's all this script does. It will get whatever the things in the build directory and upload it to S3 hosting bucket. Now, you don't have to install AWS CLI in your local machine because we are running it in AWS Code Build and we will use an image where the AWS CLI is already installed. So you don't have to worry about the CLI stuff. And then the another step is invalidating CloudFront cache, and for that we are going to run another script called cache bust dev. You can name it anything. So this is that script, cache bust dev. So here basically what I'm doing is I am invalidating CloudFront cache. So AWS CLI, I'm going to use it here as well, AWS CloudFront, and the command I'm using is create invalidation, and here I have to pass my CloudFront distribution ID. So this one needs to be replaced. I will delete that. I will go to my AWS CloudFront, and this is my CloudFront distribution, the newly created one, and you can find your distribution ID right here. Copy that and paste it here, and I'm going to invalidate the root path. Okay, save this. So that's all my front-end build script does. Now let's look at the back-end build script as well, and afterwards we'll configure the pipeline. So backend also I have the config folder, and inside that build spec dot file, and it's a rather simple file here. So here again I'm using Node.js as my runtime, and at install phase I'm installing serverless globally because I need my serverless framework to deploy my service. So what I'm going to do is I'm go into the backend folder here, and it will install all the npm dependencies. And at the build stage or the build phase, I'm just deploying my serverless file. You can do packaging as well, but I skipped that phase. So I'm just deploying this service. So now let's go to AWS console and search for code pipeline. And I don't have any pipeline created at this moment. So I will just click create pipeline, pipeline name, YouTube demo, and it's going to create a new service role for that as well. Just select new service role and I will click next. And now it's asking me to configure different stages of my pipeline. First, the source stage. Can you remember, guys? The source stage is the GitHub repo. So I will click the drop down and I will pick GitHub, and you can click connect to GitHub to connect to your GitHub. I have already done this connection, so it's basically you have to accept some security questions to connect AWS with your GitHub repo. Now I recommend you like taking a fork from this original repo and then point to that repo, or else you can just create your own GitHub, basically the repository. So the idea here is once you have connected your repository, you should be able to search for your the repository. So in this case, it is CI/CD demo 1 for my, and the branch I am going to select is the master branch. So let me show you again. So this is the repository CI/CD demo 1 that I am configuring with, and the branch is master branch. So anytime a code is committed to this master branch, my pipeline is going to trigger. Okay, so click webhooks, so that is recommended. So as and when a commit happens, there's a webhook get triggered, thereby trigger this pipeline. And the next stage is the build stage. If I go back to my presentation again, so we need two build stages rather. So let's create one here. So I will just click the build provider as my code build project. And I don't have a code build project at this moment. So what I will do is I will click create a code build project. So that will open a new window, the code build window. I can just give a name here to do front end, and make sure you select a manage instance because I'm going to use AWS Amazon Linux too, and here the AWS CLI is already installed, so I can run those scripts to deploy my front end. And the runtime, just select standard runtime image, the one that they're suggesting. And now I have to assign a service role to this code build project because this code build project is going to push some changes, the files rather, to S3, and it's going to run an invalidation to my CloudFront distribution. So in order to do these things, we have to provide permission. So that is done via this role. So I will create this new role, code build front end service role. That should do. Here for the build spec file, I can use a build spec file. I can either insert it directly or I can just use a file. Here I have to give the path. The path is basically front end slash config slash. Let me double check that. So that is front end slash and the config slash, then this is the file name. I will just copy this, paste that in, and check this CloudFront log so you can see the build logs, and click continue to code pipeline. Okay, here it says successfully created the front end in code build, and then let's click the next stage. Now it's asking me to configure the deploy stage, which we actually don't have because we are deploying it in the same code build project. What I need is another code build project. So I will skip this deploy stage, skip, and I will create my pipeline. So the pipeline is created with one build stage and it has already started building, but I want to add another stage, actually a couple more other stages. So what I'm going to do is I will click edit here and then I will click add stage. So this stage is my backend build. So I will just type backend and add stage. So you can see the stage is added. I will add a new action group as well. Click add action group. You can give any name. I will just type to-do API. So here I just need to build and deploy my to-do API. The provider is again AWS Code Build project. Input artifacts. Now I should get the inputs from the source artifact, from the source stage where the source is getting from my master branch. And I don't have a code build project here. Again, I'm going to click create project, which will open up a new window for me. And let's configure our second build project. I will type backend. That should do. Manage image, Linux 2, runtime standard, image 1 it suggests. New service role. Okay, I'm not going to create a new service role. I will use this existing service role, which is this one I created in the previous stage. And then I will use a build spec file. This time it is backend config build spec.dev.yml. You can find the path you see backend, and there's the config folder, and this is our backend build file. Okay, now that is configured, and click continue. And we have to do one other thing before we forget. So that is basically attaching permission to my service role I configured with AWS build project. So I will save this, my code pipeline. And as you can see, my initial build got failed. So this is probably due to the lack of permission. So what I will do is I will go to IAM, Identity and Access Management. I will go to roles. Here I will type code build. So this is the service role we use for both front end and back end. We should name it differently though. So that's fine now. So I will just click on here, and right now there are two permission attached, but I want to add additional permissions. Now here you have to add full S3 access, full CloudFront, and any other permission that is required. But for this tutorial, I am adding the administrator access, which would not be the best case for your production workloads. But for now, I just added this is just a tutorial. Okay. I will go back to my code pipeline. So here service role. So here services, code pipeline. This is the pipeline, YouTube demo, and let's trigger a new release. So I will click release change and click release again. So let's see if it works this time. So you can see it starts with cloning the code from the source. So it is succeeded. Now it is running the build. And by the way, you can click this AWS code build link and explore the logs that we set up. I can click on here. You can see there's an in progress build. I can click on that again. And here it's going to show all the logs related to this build. And as you can see, it is cd into my front end folder, printing my present working directory, and now it's installing my dependencies, the front end dependencies. And now it's running my npm tests. You can see our 3 fake tests are passing now. So now it's going to build my project. So npm run build is happening now. And then once it is succeeded, it's going to upload all the content from the build folder to AWS S3 bucket we configured. You can see AWS S3 sync command, and all the files are now uploaded. And finally, it's going to run my AWS cache bust script, which will do an invalidation of cache in CloudFront. Okay, it looks like it's completed. Yes, it succeeded. So I can go back to my code pipeline, and you can see this stage is now succeeded. So it went ahead and building my backend now. So I can do the same thing, open the code build project again, and it got failed. Let's check the logs. Well, here guys, I think I have missed one step. Now right now it is building the current repository code that is there in the GitHub, but we couldn't like push any changes, the current changes that we have in my local machine. So let's do that first. So here I will pull up the terminal, clear my screen. So let's do a git status, and you can see there are a lot of files that I haven't committed yet to my remote repository. So let's do that. Git add -a, and I added all the files, and let's put a commit message. YouTube CI/CD demo changes and hit enter, and let's check the remotes. Git remote -v. So I have my remote set up. So what I will do is I will do a git push origin to the master branch. So these changes will be pushed to the origin, and let's see once it is successful. Yes, now it is successful. So if I open up that command, and you can see minute ago it is pushed. So ideally my code pipeline should spin up now. And as you can see, it has already spinned up. It has taken the code, cloned the code, and now it has already started building the project as well. Very good. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes. I will pause the video and get back once this is done. Okay, so now our pipeline is successfully built. You can see all three stages are green. Even my backend is built and deployed successfully. Now we can actually test this. I will go to my CloudFront distribution, services CloudFront. I will go to my distribution and then I will get the domain name. Now this domain name, we can actually view our website. I will take a new tab and hit enter. This shows my website. So this website is now alive with this domain name. Now I can easily configure a custom domain for that, which I have already shown you in previous videos. But now it shows our website, my to-do list, and these are the three to-dos returning from my backend, the API. So we configured source stage, build stage, and the backend build stage as well. Now the last step is to set up some UI testing. So let's do that as well very quickly. I will go to my code pipeline and now we'll click edit. Let's add another stage, the fourth stage. Click add stage here. Let's type UI testing. So this is my UI testing stage. I will click add action group. This time I will type the action name Ghost Inspector. The provider, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. In the test section, I will see the Ghost Inspector UI testing. Select that. I will select the input as the source artifact, which actually doesn't really matter here. And now I will click connect to Ghost Inspector UI testing. Just click this. It's going to take me to Ghost Inspector website. And actually you have to create an account. I have already created an account. Let me show you the first screen that you will be redirected to. So this is the basic first screen, and here you can sign up for a free trial and then fill in the information, and you can use the 14-day free trial. And after that you can sign in. So I will sign in to my account. Then I will direct to the dashboard. So right now I don't have any test suits running, right? So we need to create a test suite. So we can actually create a test suite here, or we can use one of the Chrome extensions this Ghost Inspector guys provide. That's very convenient. We'll use that. I will close this window. I will leave this window as it is. What I'm going to do is I will take a new tab, Chrome extensions. So you need to use Chrome for this. They might have Firefox add-ons as well. I'm not quite sure about that. And in the Chrome Web Store, search for Ghost Inspector. There we go. Just select this one and you should find this extension. Click add to Chrome. I have already added it, and once you have added it you should see this icon appearing in your toolbar. So now what we have to do is go to your React application that is hosted using the CloudFront and click this icon. You will probably ask to log in again, which I have already done, and then check create a new test and click start recording. Okay, now anything that you do in the screen will be recorded. So for example, if I click here, it's going to record that mouse movement as well. What I actually want to do is do some assertions. So let's assert for these three to-dos. So in order to make an assertion, click back on the Ghost Inspector and then there's a button called Make Assertions. Click this one. Now I can actually select the elements. If I hover over it, I can click on this one, you see assertion recorded. And I can again click here, assertion recorded. I will click workout and eat breakfast as well. So those assertions are now created. Now every time my test suits run, it's gonna look up for these texts. And if these texts are not wake up at 4 a.m., it's gonna fail it. And that should be it. So I will just click I'm finished recording. I can give you a name. I will just type YouTube demo and save this test. Now, really, you can use Ghost Inspector to do really good assertions. Now, this is actually a very lame assertion. Uh, Now you can actually use this to validate your forms, login credentials, and everything. Now I can just click view your tests, and here we go. So these are my steps. Now it's recording a video alongside with that. So if I just click watch video, you can see it's recording my assertions. Very nice. So let's integrate with our code pipeline. I will just close this out and I will go to code pipeline. So this is the screen where we left off. I will click connect to Ghost Inspector UI testing again. So that's going to open up the Ghost Inspector. And here, this is the test suite I just recorded. What I can do is I can just click integrate test. And I will be directed back to AWS. See, it is successfully configured and I will click done. Okay, now our UI testing stage is configured. I can click save and let's do a new release. I will click release change and release. So it's gonna start off a new pipeline build. There we go. Started with source. Move to build now. Alright, so our code pipeline is now built, including our UI test stage as well. Very nice. I can just go to Ghost Inspector and see if it is successfully built. You can see indeed it did. This is the latest one. I can click on that and I can watch the video as well. So beautiful. It just works. Now you can actually change one of these to-dos and see how the UI testing phase fail. Okay guys, so this is what I want to show you and I hope you enjoy this video. I'll see you in the next time. Thanks.